Hello, and welcome to a reading and analysis of William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Act 2, Scene 1. So, previously, we were introduced to our main plot, the four Athenian youths who are fleeing into the woods, and our subplot, the rude mechanicals who are getting ready to perform a play for Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. And many playwrights would probably stop at that because that's already pretty interesting. But what Shakespeare does brilliantly in this play is he sends these characters into woods that are not uninhabited, but are actually the scene of a pretty dramatic conflict all in and of themselves. And that has to do with the fairies who we will meet in this act. So, in this scene. So we get some pretty important characters that we haven't met yet who will appear in 2-1 here. So one thing to know about fairies in Elizabethan times is they would have been seen as magical, much like kind of how we see them today, and certainly mischievous, but also potentially dangerous, also petty and opinionated and not necessarily something you would want to cross. Also, depending on who you were talking to during, Shakespeare's time in Elizabethan England, they might have been seen as real. A lot of people fully believed in fairies as these creatures that lived in these mysterious places like the woods. So if you've ever been to the woods, you know that whatever woods, doesn't matter, they can be quite intimidating, right? Straying from the path a little bit and into the unknown around you and what might be there. And for the Elizabethan audience watching this play performed when Shakespeare first wrote it, it'd be fully believable that fairies lived there, and they might be potentially problematic if you run into them. So let's go ahead and dive into 2-1 and meet some of these fairies. So we first start with Robin Goodfellow. Now, Robin Goodfellow is often known as Puck, and we'll hear that name in this scene, but Robin Goodfellow is like the official title or official name. So Robin Goodfellow enters the stage, and they see another fairy on stage already. So Robin says, "How now, spirit, whither wander you?" And the fairy says, "Over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar, over park, over pale, through flood, through fire. I do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's sphere, and I serve the fairy queen. To dew her orbs upon the green, the cowslips tall her pensioners be, in their gold coats spots you see, those be rubies, fairy favors, and those in those freckles live their savors. I must go and seek some dewdrops here, and hang a pearl in every cowslip's ear. Farewell, thou lob of spirits, I'll be gone. Our queen and all her elves come here anon." So it's interesting, a couple things just from this first exchange. You notice that the fairies don't all know each other, so there's a lot of them. They're not all familiar with each other. So this fairy doesn't necessarily, and it's usually Peas Blossom who delivers these lines, who's one of the fairies we'll meet, but it could be a different fairy entirely. But this fairy doesn't necessarily know who Robin is, and Robin doesn't necessarily know who this fairy is. But we do learn a little bit about them. First off, you'll notice that they kind of sing. In the Folger edition, those lines are like super indented that they sing, and there's a different meter to them. We're definitely not in iambic pentameter here. Over hill, over dale. That's a full line. So that's clearly not 10 syllables. It's also not even iambic. You don't say over, right? You would say over hill, over dale. So we're trochaic. So if you watched my live streams of Macbeth, then you know that the witches, or you might know this without watching them, but you know that the witches speak in trochees because they're not human. So while the humans are speaking in iambs, that unstressed, stressed, the witches, or in this instance, the fairy, is speaking in trochees, stressed, unstressed. So it's a very clever little linguistic way to differentiate between the characters' speech styles. And you don't necessarily need to pick up on that as an audience member. I'm getting more technical than you probably need here. But if you're listening to it and you're like, or even just reading it on the page, and you're like, this sounds different, that's why it sounds different. And Shakespeare's doing that intentionally. Some of the fairies will speak in iambs. Some of them will speak in trochees. I'm not going to point out every single switch, but there is a reason to the meter that Shakespeare is giving them. Okay, last thing I want to point out before we get further into the scene here is that this fairy says that she serves the fairy queen. And that queen is Titania, who we'll meet in just a little bit here. And what she's doing is going out and putting dew in the flower petals and kind of decorating. The fairies are thought of as small, right? So they, they might wear the wings of a butterfly as a coat, or an acorn as a hat, or something like that. Are things that are mentioned here. So this fairy is on Titania's side. That is not the case for Robin. Robin says, "The king doth keep his revels here tonight. Take heed the queen come not within his sight. For Oberon is the king, is passing fell and wrath, because that she, as her attendant, hath a lovely boy stolen from an Indian king. She never had so sweet a changeling. And jealous Oberon would have the child, knight of his train, to trace the forest wild. But she perforce withholds the loved boy, crowns him with flowers, and makes him all her joy. And now they never meet in grove or green, by fountain clear or spangled starlight sheen. But they do swear that all their elves for fear creep into acorn cups and hide them there." So because Robin has all this information about Oberon, the king, we can assume, and you would assume correctly, that he serves the king. So we have some fairies here that serve the queen, Titania, and some fairies, or at least Robin, who serves the king, Oberon. And what we find out here in this line is that Oberon and Titania are at war. They are not supposed to come within each other's sight. Because that first fairy is like, I'm here for the queen, and Robin is like, the king is about to get here. We better, keep them separated. And the reason they're fighting is a little strange. Titania had a boy, the son of an Indian king, a changeling, who Oberon wants the child to serve as his knight, and Titania doesn't want the child to serve as Oberon's knight. So they're kind of in this custody battle, almost. Not their child, but a child that they adopted, maybe stole, I believe adopted when we get to Titania's line, actually. But changelings were thought of as potentially children who were stolen by fairies. So when we talk about the danger of fairies, you see it right there. So yeah, they are getting ready for a potential battle. So we have a whole new plot to figure out, this warring fairy world. The fairy says, "Either I mistake your shape in making quite, or else you are that shrewd and knavish sprite called Robin Goodfellow. Are not you he that frights the maidens of the villagery, skim milk, and sometimes labors in the churn, and bootless make the breathless housewife churn, and sometime make the drink to bear no barm, misled night wanderers laughing at their harm? Those that hobgoblin call you, and sweet Puck, you do their work, and they shall have good luck. Are not you he?" So this fairy starts to recognize who Robin is, and Puck, that hobgoblin, or Puck, is what this character is usually known as Puck, right? And you get a list of the things that Puck does: frighten maidens in the village, skim some of the milk so that it's not churning properly for the housewife. The drink, like the beer, doesn't have enough foam in it. And misleads people and laughs when they get into harm's way as they wander through the woods at night. So we see that mischief of the fairies here. Robin says, "Thou speakest aright. I am that merry wanderer of the night. I jest to Oberon and make him smile when I, a fat and bean-fed horse, beguile, neighing in likeness of a filly foal." So sometimes he entertains the king by being a horse. "And sometime lurk I in a gossip's bowl, in very likeness of a roasted crab. And when she drinks, against her lips I bob, and on her withered dewlap pour the ale." So there you see, pretends to be a crab in a bowl, so that when someone drinks it, it bobs against her lips and she spills it everywhere. "The wisest aunt, telling the saddest tale, sometime for a 3-foot stool mistaketh me. Then slip I from her bum, down topples she, and Taylor cries, and falls into a cough. And then the whole choir hold their hips and laugh, and waxen in their mirth and knees and swear, a merrier hour was never wasted there. So the last one is pretending to be a stool, and when the person goes to sit down, moving, so they tumble down and they cry tailor, right? Like, my bum hurts, I need a tailor. And then everyone in the choir laughs at them. So Robin is sort of, or Puck, we're going to say Puck because that's what the character's colloquially known as. Colloquially, that's a fun word. Puck is a bit of a jester as well, not just serving Oberon, but also making him laugh. Okay. He says, but room fairy, here comes Oberon, and here my mistress, would he were gone. So those two fairies that weren't supposed to meet are about to meet. So we have Oberon saying to Titania, ill met by moonlight, proud Titania. What? Jealous Oberon? Fairies, skip hence, I have forsworn his bed and company. Tarry, rash wanton, am I not thy lord? Then I must be thy lady. But I know when thou hast stolen away from fairyland in the shape of Corin, who's like a shepherd character, sat all day playing on pipes of corn and versing love to amorous Phillida. Why art thou here? Come from the farthest steep of India, but that forsooth the bouncing Amazon, which would be Hippolyta. Your buck-skinned mistress and your warrior love to Theseus must be wedded, and you come to give their bed joy and prosperity. So there we see some interesting roles of fairies, that Oberon is sort of a Zeus-like character. He's not really the most faithful, it seems, or at least likes to flirt with other women, but also can bless their marriage, apparently. And obviously, in that quick exchange from them, ill met, tarry, rash, wanton, skip hence, right? Like you could tell they're very upset with each other. Oberon turns this on Titania and says, how canst thou thus for shame, Titania, glance at my credit with Hippolyta, knowing I know thy love to Theseus? Didst not thou lead him through the glimmering night from Pergonia, whom he ravished, and make him with fair Agles break his faith with Aridin and Antapa? Some tough mythological names there that I probably butchered. So again, we see fairies being in charge of like the love life of mortals, and we'll see one of the ways they can do that in just a little bit in this play, kind of the most famous part of the play. Titania then delivers one of the longest monologues in Shakespeare, a very famous one, which is the forgeries of jealousy. So we'll break this down as we go. Titania says, these are the forgeries of jealousy, and never since the middle summer's spring met we on hill, in dale, forest, or mead, but paved fountain, or by rushy brook, or in the beached margent of the sea, to dance our ringlets to the whistling wind. But with thy brawls thou hast disturbed our sport. So they were supposed to meet in one of the, or all of these places that she lists, right? The sea, the forest, etc., the brooks, and dance their ringlets. And instead they are brawling, and it's causing a disturbance. And we're going to see how this disturbance is played out in this monologue. One of the things this monologue does really well is not just tell us about Titania and Oberon's relationship, but also establish the setting of the forest, because Shakespeare would not have been able to bring on, massive set pieces on a fly system, or have a bunch of stuff on casters roll in easily. There would have been some decoration, but most of it is done with the words and with imagination, right? So Titania's explaining the state of the world here, and that's letting us know what type of forest we're in. So she says, therefore, the winds, piping us in vain, as in revenge, have sucked up from the sea contagious fogs, which falling in the land hath every pelting river made so proud that they have overborne their continents. So we see the water is not doing the right thing, like the fog, the contagious fog, right? And plague is a very dangerous thing at all times in humanity and in human history, but especially in Shakespeare's time, plague was quite common and quite deadly. So this contagious fog would be treated very seriously. And if the sickness of the fog isn't enough, it's also causing the riverbeds to overflow, which is obviously very dangerous and destructive. The ox hath therefore stretched his yoke in vain. The plowman lost his sweat, and the green corn hath rotted ere his youth attained a beard. So we see crops aren't working. The farmers and the oxen and the workers are not able to gather the harvest, and the corn is rotting before it's time to be harvested and consumed. Retained a beard, the fold stands empty in the drowned field, and crows are fatted with the Murrian flock. The 9 men's morris is filled up with mud, and the quaint mazes in the wanton green, for lack of tread, are undistinguishable. So the paths are overgrowing, which is a serious problem in the forest. If there is no path, it can be very easy to get disoriented and not know where you're going or how to get out. And that'll become important later on here. The human mortals want their winter here. No night is now with him or carol blessed. Therefore the moon, the governess of floods, pale in her anger, washes all the air, that rheumatic diseases do abound. So it's interesting we get this mention of seasons here, that the humans want their winter here, lack their winter, right? This is Midsummer's night. A Midsummer Night's Dream, but it seems like the seasons are topsy-turvy, or higgledy-piggledy, as they might say, in that part of the world. I love that word. Everything's turned around. Things are not how they should be right now. So the woods are not a great place to be. The paths are overgrown. The riverbeds are overflowing. Maybe it's supposed to be winter, but it's actually summer, or May, I think, later on in the play. Like, things are not the way they should be. We get mention of the moon, right? And through this distemperature, we see the seasons alter. Hoary-headed frosts fall in the fresh lap of the crimson rose, and on old Hymen's thin and icy crown an odorous chaplet of sweet summer buds is, as in mockery, set. So things blooming at the wrong time and being killed by frost. The spring, the summer, the chiding autumn, angry winter change their wonted liveries. Liveries is what you wear. And the mazed world, by their increase, now knows not which is which. Everything, climate-wise, is falling apart, and things are not operating as they should. And this same progeny of evils comes from our debate. From our dissension, we are their parents and originals. So progeny would be offspring. So they are the parents of all this destruction, all these terrible things happening in the world. They're fighting over a child, but their actual offspring is death and disease and confusion and starvation. And this is a serious issue. And Titania gives a really long appeal to stop fighting and fix this. And Oberon says, do you amend it then? Right? Like, you fix it then. Okay. It lies in you. Why should Titania cross her Oberon? But I do beg a little changeling boy to be my henchman. Right? So it's like, well, you fix it. Why are you disobeying me? All I ask is that little boy to be my henchman, and this would all be fixed. So you can see that this couple is not in a good spot. It's an idiotic thing for Oberon to follow that up with. Set your heart at rest. The fairyland buys not the child of me. His mother was a votress of my order, and in the spiced Indian air by night hath often... start that over. His mother was a votress of my order, and in the spiced Indian air by night full often hath she gossiped by my side, and sat with me on Neptune's yellow sands. So she knew this child's mother. I should have continued. Marking the embarked traders on the flood, when we have laughed to see the sails conceive and grow big-bellied with the wanton wind, which she, with pretty and with swimming gait, following, her womb then rich with my young squire, would intimate and sail upon the land to fetch me trifles and return again, as from a voyage, rich with merchandise. But she, being mortal, of that boy did die, and for her sake do I rear up her boy, and for her sake I will not part with him. So the mother's, the mother of the child dies. And she served this interesting purpose of travel and seemed to be on very friendly terms with Titania, but dies, it seems like maybe in childbirth, or at least of old age, or just being mortal, right? Unlike the fairies who can live forever, the mortals don't. So Titania has sort of adopted the boy to raise it. She makes a very good case. Oberon does not. Which is one of the things that bothers me about this play. But Oberon is kind of bumbling. In a somewhat like Theseus like vein. We see some parallels there. And all Oberon can say is, "How long within this wood intend you stay? Perchance till after Theseus' wedding day. If you will patiently dance in our round and see our moonlight revels, go with us. If not, shun me, and I will spare your haunts." So haunts is where you go, right? If you like haunt a place, it means you're there a lot. So either dance with me and fix this, or I'm not going to talk with you. Shun me, and I will avoid where you're going to be. Give me that boy, and I will go with thee. Not for thy fairy kingdom. Fairies, away. We shall chide downright if I longer stay. Titania and her fairies exit. So now it's just Oberon and Puck on stage. And Oberon says, well, go thy way. Thou shalt not from this grove till I torment thee for this injury. So we see that threat that Oberon makes. My gentle Puck, come hither. Thou rememberest, since once I sat upon a promontory and heard a mermaid on a dolphin's back uttering such dulcet and harmonious breath that the rude sea grew civil at her song, and certain stars shot madly from their spheres to hear the sea maid's music. I remember. I love that little line to finish the verse. I remember. So here we start this long monologue from Oberon, which is really important to the plot, but it has a lot of imagery that you can actually ignore. I'll explain it, though, just so you kind of understand what's going on. Oberon is asking Puck if he remembers this song. Once I was sitting somewhere and heard a mermaid on a dolphin's back singing this song. What's really interesting about this is that we think Shakespeare might be referencing this story about Queen Elizabeth, who was famously never married. Right, Virginia is named after her, and she had this childhood friend who I don't remember his name. Sorry, Earl of something, I'm sure. Childhood friend who wanted to marry her when they were adults, and tried a number of times, and she always said no, perhaps because they weren't equal class or something like that. And one time he threw an extravagant event for Queen Elizabeth that included this sort of like mechanical dolphin with a singer on it, dressed as a mermaid. So we believe Shakespeare might be referencing a real event in Queen Elizabeth's life. She famously did not get married then. So while the attempt was made, it fell short. And Oberon is going to tell us what happened with that song and what it did. That very time I saw, but thou couldst not, flying between the cold moon and the earth, Cupid, all armed. So we see Cupid, right? God of love. A certain aim he took at a fair vestal throned by the west, and loosed his love shaft smartly from his bow, as it should pierce 100,000 hearts. But I might see young Cupid's fiery shaft quenched in the chaste beams of that watery moon, and the imperial votaress passed on in maiden meditation, fancy free. So Cupid shoots the arrow, but the arrow misses its mark. And where does it land instead? Yet marked I where the bolt of Cupid fell. It fell upon a little western flower, before milk white, now purple with love's wound, and maids call it love in idleness. Fetch me that flower, the herb I showed thee once. So it's like, remember we talked about this? Yeah. Like, so that it makes sense why I'm telling you and that you can actually do it. Told you there was a lot of talk of flowers in this play. This is the most important flower of them all. The flower that Cupid shot an arrow at, or shot an arrow, and it ended up hitting this flower. And it took this flower that was white and turned it purple and gave it magical qualities, which Oberon will explain right now. The juice of it on sleeping eyelids laid, will make or man or woman madly dote upon the next live creature that it sees. So you've put the juice of the flower on someone's eyelids while they sleep. Then when they wake up, the first thing they see, they will fall in love with. Fetch me this herb, and be thou here again ere the Leviathan can swim a league. I'll put a girdle around the earth in 40 minutes. And Puck exits. So there we know that Puck and the fairies have extreme speed. At least Puck does. So he runs off to get this flower. Oberon, now talking to us because he's alone on stage, says, having once this juice, I'll watch Titania when she is asleep and drop the liquor of it in her eyes. The next thing then she, waking, looks upon, be it on lion, bear, or wolf, or bull, or meddling monkey, or on busy ape, she shall pursue it with the soul of love. So that's the plan. Put this in Titania's eyes so that she wakes up and falls in love with an animal of some sort, some ridiculous thing to fall in love with. And ere I take this charm from off her sight, as I can take it with another herb, I'll make her render up her page to me. But who comes here? I'm invisible and will overhear their conference. So love that line. I'm invisible. So Oberon says, before I take this charm off her and return her to normal, I'll make sure she gives me that boy, the page. That's what it means, page there, to be one of my knights. So it is some serious issues in their relationship, but it sets up some hilarity on stage. But before Puck can return with the flower, we see two characters enter the stage, familiar characters to us now, Demetrius and Helena. We'll remember that Helena told Demetrius of Hermia and Lysander's plan to run off and get married in the hopes of impressing him. But here we'll see Demetrius has other plans in mind as he runs into the woods. He says, I love thee not, to Helena, right? I love thee, first thing he says to her in the whole play. I love thee not, therefore pursue me not. Where is Lysander and fair Hermia? The one I'll stay and the other stayeth me. Which is like sometimes rewritten as slay. So he wants to kill Lysander, but Hermia is slaying him, right? Thou toldest me they were stolen unto this wood, and here am I, and wood within this wood, because I cannot meet my Hermia. Hence get thee gone and follow me no more. So he's like, you told me they were here. They're not. Now I'm a piece of wood because I can't do anything. And you need to leave me and stop following me. Helena says, you draw me, you hard-hearted adamant, but yet you draw not iron from my heart is, sorry, start that over. You draw me, you hard-hearted adamant, but yet you draw not iron, for my heart is true as steel. Leave you your power to draw, and I shall have no power to follow you. So adamant is like a magnet. So she is drawn to him like a magnet, but not iron, right? Which would have been seen as harsh, perhaps, I guess, but steel, something very true. So she's even more drawn to him, even though he's, being rude to her. Do I entice you? Do I speak you fair? Or rather, do I not in plainest truth tell you I do not, nor I cannot love you? And even for that, do I love you the more? I am your spaniel, and Demetrius, the more you beat me, I will fawn on you. Use me but as your spaniel, spurn me, strike me, neglect me, loose me, only give me leave, unworthy as I am, to follow you. What worser place can I beg in your love, and yet a place of high respect with me, than to be used as you use your dog? Wow. So Helena has no self-respect, right? She's being extreme here. Those lines are sometimes cut. But it's meant to be extreme. It's meant to be very funny because she is so over the top of how much she wants Demetrius back. And Demetrius says, tempt not too much the hatred of my spirit, for I am sick when I do look on thee, and I am sick when I look not on you. So she turns that on him. You do impeach your modesty too much to leave the city and commit yourself into the hands of one that loves you not, to trust the opportunity of night and the ill counsel of a desert place with the rich worth of your virginity. Your virtue is my privilege, for that it is not night when I do see your face. Therefore I think I am not in the night, nor doth this wood lack worlds of company, for you in my respect are all the world. Then how can it be said I am alone when all the world is here to look on me? So Helena has very clever wordplay to flip everything on Demetrius. He brings up like, I don't like you. But she's like, well, you're like a magnet that draws me. He says you're being foolish and unsafe to run into the woods with someone who doesn't care for you. And she turns that on him. He says like, it's unsafe to be out here at night. And she says, it's not the night and I'm not alone because you're here in your whole world and all this sort of stuff. And all Demetrius can say to all of this is, I'll run from thee and hide me in the brakes, which is like branches, and leave thee to the mercy of wild beasts, right? So I'll abandon you and let a lion eat you or something. A little foreshadowing. The wildest hath not such a heart as you. Run when you will, the story shall be changed. Apollo flies and Daphne holds the chase. So Apollo and Daphne, famous myth. Apollo in mythology has terrible luck in the dating world. So he is pursuing this girl, Daphne, a nymph, I think, Daphne, who is not interested in him, even though he's a god. And rather than be with him, she turns herself into a tree in order to escape his pursuit. There's a famous sculpture by Bernini depicting that scene. So that's one example. Then she says, the dove pursues the griffin. So again, flipping things, a griffin would pursue a dove. The mild hind, which is a deer, makes speed to catch the tiger. Bootless speed when cowardice pursues and valor flies. So she's like, no, I'll chase you. You think you're going to run from me? Well, then I'll chase you. Instead of the guy chasing the girl, it'll be the girl chasing the guy this time. I will not stay thy questions. Let me go. Or if thou follow me, do not believe, but I shall do thee mischief in the wood. Aye, in the temple, in the town, the field, you do me mischief. Fie, Demetrius, your wrongs do set a scandal on my sex. We cannot fight for love as men may do. We should be wooed, and we're not made to woo. So Helena in this play has some really interesting lines about what it means to be a woman. And here we see one of the first ones, which is that women are not given the opportunity in the societal expectations to fight for love. They have to stand there and have people woo them. And why is it so extreme that she is pursuing love here instead of waiting to be pursued by someone else? But while she says that, Demetrius runs off stage. She says, I'll follow thee and make a heaven of a hell to die upon the hand I love so well. And Helena runs after her. And Oberon, who's like terrible when it comes to relationships, takes pity on her. He says, fare thee well, nymph. Ere he do leave this grove, thou shalt fly him, and he shall seek thy love. So maybe takes pity on her. He says, I'm going to make him fall in love with you. But he does say he's going to fall in love with you so much that you'll want to run away from him. But anyway, it's important that Oberon saw that. Puck re-enters. Hast thou the flower there? Welcome, wanderer. Aye, here it is. I pray thee, give it to me. Robin gives the flower. And then Oberon says, I know a bank where the wild thyme blows, where oxlips and nodding violet grows, quite over canopied with luscious woodbine, with sweet musk roses, and with elegantine. There sleeps Titania sometime of the night, lulled in these flowers with dances and delight, and there the snake throws her enameled skin. Weed wide enough to warp a fairy. Oh gosh, messed that up. And there the snake throws her enameled skin, weed wide enough to wrap a fairy in. And with the juice of this, I'll streak her eyes and make her full of hateful fantasies. Take thou some of it, and seek through this grove. So he gives part of the flower to Puck. A sweet Athenian lady is in love with a disdainful youth. Anoint his eyes, but do it when the next thing he espies may be the lady. Thou shalt know the man by the Athenian garments he hath on. Affect it with some care, that he may prove more fond on her than she upon her love. And look thou meet me ere the first cock crow. Fear not, my lord, your servant shall do so. So we see at the very end there, Oberon splits the flower, or at least gives part of it to Puck, and says, I'm going to go to where Titania sleeps and put this on her eyelids. You're going to take this and find an Athenian man, right? And there shouldn't be that many Athenian men in the woods. So find this Athenian youth, this Athenian man, and put the flower in his eyes so that when he wakes up, he sees this woman, Helena, and falls madly in love with him. So that's Oberon's plan. And that is 2-1. It is a long scene. It's got a lot of plot and a lot of new characters introduced, but it's got some great monologues, right? Puck, Oberon, and especially Titania all have great monologues. And that scene between Helena and Demetrius is one of Shakespeare's best just two-hander scenes, where you have just two characters getting to play out a scene. It's a wonderful scene for audition and practice for actors to learn and learn from. So definitely an important scene in the play. Thanks for sticking around with it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you want some kind of like nature-y looking notebooks, check out Field Notes in the description. Wonderful Chicago-based company made here in America, high quality paper, wonderful designs, very collectible. So be warned if you're into collecting. I think there's some of the originals on eBay right now for over $1,000 for 3 notebooks, which is a little insane. They don't have that on the website. But yeah, it's a devout community of creatives and writers who love Field Notes. So if you're interested in some, you can get 10% off your first order using the code in the description. Helps out the channel and hopefully gives you a nice new notebook. So, well, it will if you use it. Not hopefully. I'm sure they'll deliver it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in Act 2, Scene 2. Happy reading.